All right. So hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today on a Friday lunchtime with the one and only Radek. Radek, I can't pronounce your surname, but I do like it. So I might ask you to do that for me. Radek is a very special guest for me because, you know, I had the pleasure to know him. I think, was it kind of at the beginning of the pandemic or just before? That we got connected on the internet, on LinkedIn, and we both have we share some training, educational affinities, and yeah, and then we took it from there and we collaborated on a few projects. And
it started, just to give the context, it started with something that I called Madrid Training Festival, to organize a training festival live in person in a city. But then the pandemic hit Spain, so we moved it into online training festival. And I think this was like the best outcome of the pandemic for me, to have this possibility to explore online training on a large scale with you. So that was this. And for the surname is Czahajda. So I'm Radek Czahajda, and really happy to be here with you today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's, as I said, it's actually an honor to have you here, and I want to share with our audience, you know, that one of the things that I most appreciate about you from the get-go, you know, is I think your seriousness, your commitment, your devotion to the projects that you set out to do. Like, you really kind of go the distance, and clearly you're younger than me, but I look at you as a kind of mentor, actually, because I just find that you act in a way that I think is, you know, a model to aspire to. So I want to ask you, in terms of, and I know it sounds a little bit too serious of a question for a Friday, kind of nearly Friday afternoon, but where did you get your work ethics from? You know, was it inspired by other people? I would imagine, but what kind of prompted that in you? And tell us a little bit about your trajectory and how you got to where you are now.
That's an interesting question. I think, you know, I've conducted a lot of interviews about, you know, what kind of trainer am I, what kind of projects do I run, and usually we start, where do I started training? Like, why did this journey happen? But if you ask about this commitment, this grit, I think it's even earlier, before I even knew training existed, because that was high school. And I would say, you know, like in my childhood and throughout high school, my ambition was up to find the job where can I wear a suit, look good, have a nice payroll, come back home, don't care about anything. And that was it. That was the criteria. And the majority of people in high schools have something like that, no clue what to do in their lives. And then I was quite lazy, you know, comparing to people I know who learned like 5 languages over high school. I was rather partying with friends. But I also started sports, and like I had a really good trainer whom I think they should build one day a monument for him in the city, because he really helped a lot of people to build this passion, to build this grit. So, you know, summer, winter, spring, autumn, no matter the weather, getting on your bike, traveling 3 kilometers to the gym to train every 3 times a week, while your friends are partying, while your friends are watching TV series and so forth. And I would say, you know, like, this was because the science says that the grit, this perseverance, is a muscle you can train. And I think I really got to train this muscle over there. And since then, you know, later on in the university, joining different students organizations, and then eventually discovering training, I still had this muscle that was just, you know, keeping me going. So whenever I choose something like online training festival or evidence-based training, like the 2 things that I'm recently the most proud of, it's, you know, the same grit, the same perseverance that brought me to the training some decade ago, or more than a decade ago, is right now pushing me towards some other projects. So I think we as human beings should and could, I think this is the most important, could develop this grit. It's a muscle, and we can train that. And like you would not believe what kind of a person I was in high school, how lazy I was and so forth. Like everyone can go through from there to running some projects that are so ambitious that frighten you. and that's that was my way.
I mean, I love that, because that touches, I think, on what is, let's say, kind of a classic of personal development, that things kind of, that you can start with the body, right? You start training, you start with the body, you start running, you start doing exercise, you start training the muscles, which will then equip you to train the muscles of, well, discipline, consistency, all of those things that you need in order to bring ideas and projects to complete fruition, right? Tell me a little bit about the consistency, how you develop that consistency over time. And not just that, how from that consistency, how you were then able to build a focus. Because I know that you're a guy with many different interests, right? As I think most trainers probably are. But what made you actually think, what, I'm going to kind of converge my interests into training, into education, into kind of starting a project. Well, in this case, your online training festival. Tell us a little bit about what allowed you to kind of narrow down your focus as you develop your consistency.
I'm a terrible person to be asked this question.
Okay. Why is that?
I didn't. I'm I'm an example of a person who's doing a lot of different things that sometimes don't really match with each other, but still with this I thrive quite well. So sometimes it's a conference, sometimes it's a training, sometimes it's a book I write, sometimes it's an e-learning project, sometimes it's not even about education. Like next week I'm going to start my mushroom farm because I got to to get interested in how the fungi can nourish you, the food of the future, and how we can get rid of meat if we actually explored all different sorts of mushrooms. A totally random thing in a way, like it's not even education. And what this passion towards doing things and towards being active is something that is allowing to do that. So as a trainer, I have a hard time being a trainer that is not really connected with anything. There are trainers in public speaking, trainers in communication, trainers in motivation, and then you think, okay, so I want to have a motivation training. What kind of trainer delivers motivation? And then there are trainers who really put their brand over there, while I'm a trainer who delivers all of that. But what distinguishes me is this evidence-based approach. So I kind of, on one hand, I defended myself from narrowing down, from specifying what exactly I'm teaching. But on the other hand, I specified in the way how I do that, which is distinguishable. Like there is very few trainers who call themselves evidence-based, but I don't see any competition because all of us are doing it in a different way. So if someone attends my training and they like my way, which is like tons of research, a lot of science, and then we try to make sense out of it, how to put that into practice, then no one else can deliver this form of education. And over time, more and more people got interested in this style. And then when they have a training program in mind, they ask me, do you have experience in this topic? Because so in this sense, but it was hard. So terrible person to be asked that.
But I'll tell you why I asked that, though, because that is certainly what you project. And what I meant by narrowing down, I don't mean like an exclusive focus. I know that it's very difficult for creative people to kind of only focus on one thing and disregard all the rest, because that's just not how that creative part of the brain works, right? That side of the brain. But what you do project, I think, is the balance of, having developed the discipline to at least stick to one thing, enough. Probably the impression that I have is that would have been like a project-based approach. Like, okay, I've got a project like the training festival, which involves other people. I need to show up. I need to be committed for that. And then that will then take a life of its own. But in order to build it, I just kind of have to be present and kind of do the like just hustle, as they say, right?
Yeah.
So I meant kind of in that sense, and I think that makes perfect sense. That now you're gonna have your farm and other future projects, but you kind of build blocks, don't you? Maybe that's
I think when I reflect on that, there might be two different things about it. Like one is it's somehow time framed. So for instance, right now, I know that I'm working on one new project, which will launch on May and will last until June. Then from June on until September, when there is not much going on in the education sphere, I will write one or maybe two even books in this period, and then another project starting from September. So I have this, it's not very structured. I wish it was better, but I'm proud that with my low level of organization, it's at least something like that when I look at my calendar and I look in the month period, I know, okay, this month I'm working on this train the trainer, then the next month I'm starting to work on this evidence-based study groups, then summer book, then so in this sense this helps as one thing. And the other is I'm thinking about online training festival, which is maturing enough that soon I will probably let go. I will create the full independent system that I wish someone else will take over from then. So the question that I'm asking myself every now and then when I'm deep into something, like now with podcasting, with different things, like what actually is my purpose for it right now? What is, like, why I'm doing that? What should I achieve? And when enough is enough? And for OTF was to create a platform that trainers can use and can promote their training, can see the feedback on their training, see how it positions in among the entire training arena. So it might seem that we provide quality, cheap education for people, but actually what we do is that we help trainers to develop, and this was the main purpose. So I see this is already achieved, and then investing more and more into that won't really bring anything more for me. So it's kind of good enough as a product, so I can let go, I can move to something else. And it happens with a lot of things. Like with podcasting, I was really curious, what can you do about it to make it a very high quality educational experience? And I'm not quitting yet because I didn't figure that out. Recorded right now over 20 episodes of different podcasts and still trying to find a way how this actually can help people grow. In a sense, like I know how it works right now, but how can we bring it level up? This is something I'm curious right now. And once I figure that out, probably I will also let go, or maybe I will record less frequently because now it's like every week or twice a week sometimes for a new episode. So this is the kind of background thinking, why I'm doing that and when it will be enough, and then focusing on something else. And I think it really helps. One day, maybe just a little bit of introduction to that, what I want to say. Some time ago, I was thinking there is this agile project management, which means that you have a goal, in a sense, you have some features you want to achieve, but then you don't define from scratch, from the beginning, what exactly will you do? You do that iteratively. Every 2 weeks, you'll have a meeting and figure out, okay, this is where we are, this is where we want to be, so what we need to do in the next 2 weeks. And I try to implement that in my life. So how can I have a goal in mind. I want to be the best trainer in the world, whatever, the Bruce Lee of trainers. What can I do in the next 2 weeks, right? So not really planning all the way through, but just thinking in this moment, what is the best thing to do? And especially because the world of training is crazy right now. The entire business world is crazy. So there is not really much sense in planning, okay, so this is my life plan of how I will grow, and this is what I will do on my retirement as an educator. I think we really need to adapt. We need to, like metaverse is coming, how this will affect the training. Maybe it won't. I hope it won't. But we'll see. Maybe we will meet each other in the virtual sphere eventually.
Wow. I mean, for a person who claims not to be that structured, that was a beautifully structured answer, I find. But precisely because that's the balance there. It's you plan a little, but you don't over plan, right? And then you collect evidence along the way, and you kind of build your training, and you help people, like, in that way. And this is like the best. So you're showing people, I think, the way to go, even with your own example. And you're doing that, I think, in a very open way. And and maybe precisely that's what I think kind of inspires people and kind of draws people to want to work with you. I think they kind of sense that transparency and that good intention, right, coming from you, from your heart. So that really just kind of transpires.
One thing, just before you move on, because I'm not sure, something that really, I'm talking about things that helped me over the years, but there was one thing that helped me, I think, last year, when I was struggling about all those different things I'm doing, and then seeing people who are super focused in one field and escalating that, and just trying to figure out, okay, so maybe I should stop. And I realized that I was searching for a bigger purpose, something that I can focus on as a reason for everything I'm doing. So kind of, so why I'm actually investing my time in all those different activities. And for me, this purpose is changing how the world learns. So I think there is really a lot of things to do in learning from primary school to elderly education. Right now, I'm focused on adult learning, but maybe in the future, I will also work more with the more systematic learning in schools, in universities. And this explains, for instance, I'm doing this conference because I want to learn how to make a conference better as an educational event. And then sometimes it also helps, okay, I won't do that because it's not really helping me to understand better how to improve learning as a, as an activity, as a field. So this taking time to figure out, okay, so what is the biggest purpose I have in my professional mission was my biggest thing I'm not sure if it was quite recent, probably end of 2021, when I was struggling, trying to make sense of everything I do, and then figuring out, okay, this is it. And it helps me make a lot of decisions right now. So it's something I would certainly recommend.
Wow, I'm like, I love that, because it's like having that one guiding principle that guides, I would say, your professional life and your life, right? It's a life principle. And exactly, it's like, we all know that, systems, well, they have to change, and they are changing, right? Even the most resistant people to that change, they can just see it coming. They know it's kind of unstoppable, right? We are more and more, we're learning, I think, I don't know if you would agree with this, we're learning together, because the world, the way that it's globalized, the way that something that happens over there clearly has consequences over here. So we just don't have that kind of division anymore. So we're all in this together. We're learning together. We are sharing projects and affinities together. We are pushed to re-examine our lives and our relationships, and also, I guess, we're being pushed to develop our improvisation skills as well. One of the things that I am very interested in, and I think potentially in the future, or in the not too distant future, I would venture, excuse me, I'm interested in emergency pedagogy, right? We have so many people that are displaced right now, right? Whether we have mass migrations or refugees, people being displaced for various reasons, war reasons, and so on. What happens to the education of kids in those moments? Because it doesn't stop, right? And I think there are some people doing some very interesting things, and I'm kind of eager to learn more about that. And on that note, you are in a place right now. You're in Warsaw, right? In Poland. So I was saying to you before we started recording that all eyes are kind of on Poland right now. It's a very, very sort of strategic country right now. Tell us a little bit, how's it going over there? Tell us a little bit, what is your kind of personal take on all this? Very serious, very complex subject. We have, well, each of us, I guess, our own sources of information, but there's nothing like talking to someone who is kind of in situ. So tell us a little bit, what's your perception of this?
Well, so glad you clarified for the personal, because it's there is so many things going on, and I'm trying to be in the loop, and this is one thing that is happening, like this fear of missing out, and people spending a lot of time into understanding what is going on every day, watching the news, reading articles, and so forth. So it's really the main topic for over a month now. It's over a month of the Russian invasion. So like one thing from my NGO background, like I was back in the days, I was quite an activist, and I'm observing an impressive and heartwarming involvement of people in Poland that I have never seen before. And like non-profit arena in Poland is quite struggling in terms of finances, in terms of volunteers compared to other countries. But when the war hit and when the refugees started to arrive to Poland, there were so many people eager to help that a lot of people actually feel guilty and bad because they couldn't find a way to help. There were so many people willing to volunteer, to travel to the border, to help people move, to offer their houses for accommodation, that there was more than needed at the given time. And I was at first I was invited as I told you, like as a project manager in NGO, I was invited to one of such crisis centers in Warsaw to help them structure and organize. And I spent a full day there watching how they work. And there was quite a lot of chaos. But in a sense, this chaos was good enough. It was working. And they, at the time, they didn't really need to organize it even more. So I also felt redundant in there. But it was really heartwarming to see so many people willing to help. There was a line for people to get registered, those who arrived to Poland, and there was another even longer line for people to sign up as a volunteer. And even longer line for people with donations, with some food, some medicines, some clothes. It's getting more and more organized right now. I'm really happy that local governments took over. So the municipalities, the like majorly the very, very local. So the cities, the how do you call that? Like those small neighborhoods around smaller cities, smaller villages.
Local authorities and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So they got involved and they start to organize this. They start to give it a shape, give it, this higher structure, because a lot of initiatives also took over from bottom up. A lot of just NGOs or free volunteers who started. And when the crisis hit, the very same day, hundreds, thousands of people organizing in one day to figure out how to help people who are fleeing a war. And then weeks, like 2 weeks later, the cities jumped in with a bit more structured approach. So there is, like in Warsaw, I've seen, I think 2 days ago, probably the biggest tent that ever was built in Poland, created, like next to the train station, for people who arrive just to get the very first help. So to get information, to get SIM cards, to get some food, to have some rest before they go on to some place to stay for a longer time, depending on how long the war will continue. So yeah, on this side, I'm very impressed. I'm very proud, and I feel like I'm one of those people feeling guilty with knowing my skill set, knowing I could help, but just there is no place to help, in a sense. So all we do is that we keep on supporting financially the NGOs. And I think this is important also for everyone listening. Like if you figure out, okay, I'm caring, I think there should be something done. There is tons of NGOs, tons of links you can already find to support directly to Ukraine or to those who are working with the refugees in Poland. Quite uneasy to find, so maybe not a place to list them. So this is this humanitarian aspect. Then like there is also business aspect, which is a bit more scary. I think a lot of businesses got affected just like the citizens. So the communication slows down. I mean, even small training businesses, a lot of clients that I had scheduled, we should do something in April, they froze in a sense. So everything is freezing, everything is slowing down. We are more careful. What could we say? What couldn't we say? And it's an interesting thing. I'm always for this positive altruism, for like when we help, we don't have to be sad or feeling guilty or whatsoever that we are feeling better, that we are feeling good. It's not a shame, and it won't help anyone if more and more people will feel depressed because of the war. So I see it as something worrying, and I'm wondering how long will that last, because it's self-induced crisis in a sense. So there is no need for it, but just because of this insecurity of what is right, what is not right, if we should organize this theatrical improvisation training, or maybe it's not a good time to be happy. If we should, I've seen even some of those improv theaters canceling their shows because it's not a time to have fun. But I think it is very much the best time to have fun, to balance the emotions.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. What you're saying actually reminds me, the writer Susan Sontag, who passed a few years ago, but she was American writer, and she was in Sarajevo for the better part of like 3 years or something, during the the siege in Bosnia. And she kind of wanted to volunteer, and she wanted to do just kind of whatever people wanted her to do, participate in different projects. And they said, well, why don't you organize a theater play? And she said, are you sure? Like a theater play, like in the middle of bombs and everything? And they were like, of course, we're not animals, we want to. So precisely the most, what I got from that is precisely the most seemingly superficial things. They are what confer dignity to people, not just the basic help. The basic help, I think everyone is kind of, trying to provide as to the best of their abilities. But then precisely any kind of social, cultural animation, that kind of thing, certainly has its place. And I mean, we all know how keeping our spirits up, either with meditation, either with having fun, either with physical activity, dancing, whatever it is, that's what then kind of helps us regulate our nervous system, helps us have better ideas, helps us cope with terrible situations. So I don't know, but my feeling, or at least, or maybe it's wishful thinking, but I just kind of wish that what you mentioned there, precisely because there's no need for that might dissipate, because too many people right now are connected on the right level, right? At the soul level. They themselves will know, because they're so connected, they will know kind of what to do or not to do. Kind of people don't need that kind of thing right now. And yes, I mentioned the personal at the beginning when I was asking this question, because we all know that we live in a world of fake news, complex information, he said, who done it, all of these things. And it masks the situation, as being very complex. And I'm not saying that there isn't a place for complexity, for analysis, for deeper understanding of what is really going on, but we can't have that all the time, or certainly not exclusively. There is a level of simplicity as well, which is the level of human connection. And when that kind of switch is turned on, people kind of seem to wake up and mobilize very, very quickly. And they realize very quickly, on kind of which side of the story they want to be on. And they just act. They don't question it. They just, they just reach out. So that is, for me, wonderful to hear that you can see that in Poland right now. I myself hope to see it when I travel there. And as to you feeling guilty, as you said, that surprises me as well, because, being there, you're bearing witness to this. I don't think that this issue is going to go away anyway. So maybe it's a question of timing, right? Maybe not right now, but maybe in a few weeks. You will know when the time comes, if it comes, for you to contribute in any way that is not just financial or whatever, right? So I want to say that I trust in that sense. I think you have a very strong and very accurate internal guidance system that will kind of direct you appropriately. My last question regarding that, and then we can finish. Is there anything, well, I mean, you mentioned that, you want people to kind of know that probably financial help is the best thing right now. If there's anything else that we want us to know, please, use this moment to let us know. And then moving on to back to Radek, tell us a little bit about, what you're working on right now, and where can people find you if they want to know more about you, if they want to connect with you, that kind of thing.
I need to figure out some simpler way to pronounce my surname so people can actually Google that, because what is good about it is that it's so uncommon that when you just put my surname in Google, you can find my website on every platform. But the pronunciation. Well, yesterday I had or 2 days ago I had a talk on local HR meetup, and I was saying about some story of one of my first evidence-based speeches that I had on one event. I was trying to show the educators gathered there how broad the world of science of education is, like how many things there are still to discover. And this is still my thing. This is still my goal to pursue. But what I did is I created a quiz at the beginning to ask them how much they know, and they knew nothing. Wow. And in a way, this was my point. I mean, I knew they won't know that, this and that research, like how could they know that? But they got so angry at me and so frustrated, like, okay, so I don't know that, but I don't need that because I am still an educator and I'm thriving, I'm doing fine. So it was a terrible way to show people science. So I'm still searching for new ways. There are those 2 podcasts I'm doing on science of business, and that's one. You can find Science of Business, which is in English. And then right now I'm developing new form of working with science, because what I do, what is my core in this field is that I'm doing training, I'm doing speeches. But then what happens is that, for instance, evidence-based motivation. Whenever I do this training, I always do it with the same research pieces because I'm doing it for a new client and they didn't know that. So I need to start with the basics. And then there is so much new research that we just can't cover in one single event that grinds my gears, because I'm so curious to read about it. I'm so curious to find a way to tell that. So I'm using podcasts, but then it's just, it's a promotional part of the business and not really the core. So right now I'm working on something that I call evidence-based study groups, where we will gather different professionals of different fields. So we will have hopefully one for trainers, one for leaders, one for HR managers, one for CEOs, for startup owners, one for marketing experts, one for sales experts. So people from your niche, from different countries across Europe, and we gather together and we do two things. One is we discuss new research in this area. So, you know, what new is about advertising, and then discuss, okay, how can we apply it in our strategies? And then the second is to exchange practices between each other. So this human to human connection in terms of learning from each other. And this goes, you know, to this changing how the world learns. So one of my current principles is that I can't really offer that much knowledge as is gathered in the room when we meet. So to really dive into the experiences of the participants, of the members of this study group, to learn from each other and to build the capacity in a way that after 2 months, 6 months, I'm not sure yet how long this one study group will be, but after that, I'm not only having my experiences from all my life that I gathered, but I have experiences of 12 more people, and that now I'm, you know, 12 marketing managers in one person, because we connected on this level. So this is something I'm exploring, and this is, so the pilot will be, and I plan to start it in May for 2 months to see how it actually works, and then in the autumn I'm thinking of launching several for different fields and seeing how it evolves. But I'm super passionate because literally, like, there is, I'm not sure about the number, we'll need to double check, but there is something around 70,000 research pieces published every day. So there is a lot to discover, a lot to work with.
Radek, you know, I just find all that stuff fascinating, and the way you're able to bring people together and combine knowledge and expertise and really kind of, you know, break through kind of new ground. I want to acknowledge you for everything that you do. I want to encourage everyone listening to this to really check his Radek's podcast. Science of Business. I love it. I've listened to quite a few conversations, and it's just so good, and you just kind of learn so much. You've got, you know, great guests on there as well. And Radek, thank you so much for your time. I want to, hopefully talk to you again sometime in the future, because I know that this is never enough. I know that you'll be doing all kinds of things creatively, because you're unstoppable. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you for sharing. This was great fun. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure also.
And all the
Took
best.
some notes from what you were sharing.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for tuning in and for listening. I'll be back soon, and I'll keep you posted on whatever Radek is up to. Thank you, and bye for now. Take care. Cheers.